Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and today I want to talk about coming back to language learning after a break. And I think that this is something that a lot of people have probably encountered at some point, and it can be very challenging and very difficult to just kind of get back into the swing of things. I know that I've faced this plenty of times over the years, and it can be very, very hard. So I wanted to talk about it and really just kind of try to give you some strategies on how you can maybe make that process a little bit easier. And really, coming back from a break can mean a lot of different things. Maybe you tried to learn a language in the past and you quit and you want to give it a second go. Maybe you have taken a vacation or life got busy and you've kind of taken a break from language learning for a week, maybe a couple weeks, couple months. It doesn't really matter. I think the same principle applies, but obviously the longer you've been away, I think the more significant kind of the hurdle seems to kind of get back into the swing of things. So the first thing that I think is worth pointing out is to really just look at why you took that break. And it might actually be a simple answer. Life got busy, you took a vacation, and there's nothing more to analyze. But I think this question makes a lot more sense to ask yourself if you quit for whatever reason, or you took a very long and extended break. And I know that some people probably don't want to look at these things, but I think it's very important to look at the aspects of language learning outside of the actual act of language learning. In a lot of ways, it's just as important or more important than the actual act of language learning itself. So to give an analogy, when you look at like boxing, for example, there's this technique aspect, there's the training, there's the strength, right? But even outside of the boxing, right, there's a mindset that goes on. There's a training routine. There's these things that are building the boxer, building the fighter that contribute to his success, in fights. So, it's not just the technique, it's not just the strength, it's these other aspects. And it's the same goes with language learning, right? You want to look at these other aspects that are influencing your success, whether that's routine, what went wrong, goals, etc. And it might not be as cool as, hey, here's a unique strategy to learn a ton of words, but I think it's just as important. And ultimately, if you do focus on some of these things, it's going to help you to make more progress, whether that's learning more words, having more fun, etc. So I think it's very important to look at these things. And going back to our point, I think it's really important to look at, why did you take that break? And there's a ton of reasons why. I have a video on why a lot of people quit learning languages. I'll link it in the description. But, just a couple of kind of ideas that come to my mind is people just kind of got off of a routine. They got off their habit. Life got a little bit busy. And they didn't really have a routine, and they just didn't have the motivation, they didn't have the discipline or routine set in, and then they just kind of slowly over time quit. Maybe you didn't have a very fun and compelling method, and you lost motivation over time. Maybe you got discouraged with trying to speak, or the grammar was really difficult to overcome. There's a ton of examples why this could have happened. Even if you haven't quit the language, but maybe you have ramped down a little bit, it could be something as simple as, you're just not enjoying the listening content that you were using as much, or you're really just getting frustrated with speaking, So even if you haven't quit the language and maybe you just ramped down your studies, you've taken a week break, 2-week break, multiple months, you've quit the language, I think it is worthwhile to kind of analyze why this actually happened. And like I said, depending on your situation, there might not be much to analyze here, but I think it's worth pointing out because now, if you kind of try to see, okay, this is why I quit, I wasn't having fun, or my method wasn't effective, now with that information, we can go forward into the future and go, okay, how do I fix this? How do I use a better strategy this time? Now you're better equipped to make more progress, to reduce the chances of quitting, to have more fun going forward, right? If you don't analyze the past of why things happened, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, I think, to, get back into the swing of things. So I think that's the first thing to do. I think the second thing that probably a lot of people encounter, it's probably the biggest thing, is that there's just this mountain, right? It's just there's no momentum. How do you get back into this, activity that you were doing? And it just seems like it's very hard to get motivation. It seems very overwhelming. And I think that probably the best way to kind of combat, just getting back into the swing of things is set up a plan and set up a routine. This is, I think, not to be overlooked. Probably when you're first trying to get back into the swing of things, one thing that is kind of challenging is, okay, where was I from my skill level, right? Depending on how long it's been, what do I start doing? How do I start picking up the words that I used to know? Whatever it was, I think the first thing to identify is just, okay, create a plan on what you want to do. What activities are you going to do? It doesn't have to be super in depth, but just have some sort of plan, right? I'm going to use this app to learn vocabulary words, or I'm going to start using reading, Monday through Friday, or practice listening in the morning. Whatever it is, just kind of create some activities for yourself that you want to do, and then establish some sort of routine, some sort of consistency. So first, you have kind of a plan of what you want to do in terms of learning the language. And then the second thing is some sort of consistency aspect. And obviously, I think probably the biggest thing to do is just have some degree of consistency, just try to be consistent with 15 minutes every day, 30 minutes every day versus some really intimidating long, big goal. If you can reach those big goals, great. But I think the key here is consistency at the beginning, because it's going to take some time to get those cobwebs off. It's going to take some time just to get back in the swing of things. And I think that the two things that will probably do you the most service is just consistency and having a plan, right? Because if you have a plan, you don't have to think about what you need to do, right? You just, okay, I'm going to use this flashcard app, I'm going to read every day, and then you go for it. So with a plan and some sort of consistency established, we're slowly kind of getting back into the habit of things. And that's really what we want to build. We want to build a habit again. We want to build consistency again, where you're comfortable putting in the time and energy into language learning. And slowly over time, depending on how long you've been away, the words are going to come back to you. You're going to get more comfortable with the language. It might take longer or shorter depending on how long a break it's been, but I think that establishing that plan and that routine and consistency is very critical. And slowly you're just going to kind of get back to a place of where you were. And I think at that point, ramp up your vocabulary, ramp up your learning or your study methods or whatever you are to the level that you want to go. But I think that consistency is very critical at first. And of course, once you have a consistency, once you have kind of created some sort of plan, then we can take the kind of method or the things that we looked at, right, of why we maybe took a break, why we quit, and try to apply that to our language learning, okay, and try to be a little bit more successful moving forward, right? Obviously, if you can implement that at the very beginning, that's great too. But take a look at what went wrong, and then change your strategy, change your method up a little bit, such that you'll be a lot more successful going forward. So, kind of the end point here is that really look at why you failed in the past with quitting with language learning, or you took that break. Maybe there's nothing to analyze there. And then establish a plan on what you're going to do, and then build some sort of consistency. I think this is the kind of the key points to do coming back to language learning from a break, whether that's a really short amount of time or a long amount of time. That routine, that momentum is really going to help you quite a bit, especially since you have no momentum, and that mountain might seem very difficult to overcome. So just slowly, gradually build back that momentum, build back that consistency, and I think you'll find that it's a little bit easier to come back to language learning after a break. So that's what I had to say. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.